welcome to DiverSync's video podcast. This is the first time we've done this. I'm Rich Sinowick. You guys have known my voice for the last 6 years, but this is Bill Money, and Bill is going to be the color commentator for this program, and he's also our editor. So all the quality of video is his fault, and again, all the quality of sound is his fault too.
That'll be edited out.
Yeah, we won't edit anything out like that. So hopefully this works. And this is kind of the process of what it is for you guys that have listened to my podcast since the beginning. The podcast has evolved to both the good, bad, ugly, and to a reasonably tolerant level now. So that's what we're hoping to do with this video podcast. So what we're going to discuss today is what, Bill?
The missile silo dive from Texas in September of last year.
So you guys would have listened to me talk about that. You know how excited I was about it. And for you guys that have also been excited about me doing this, had seen me do the Shipwreck Festival, you know how excited I was about this trip. So basically what we're going to do is talk about the whole process and take it a little bit further. We started talking about this when?
Oh, God, it was June or July last year.
So it came from us from an idea where I had talked about it, and then somebody who had been talking to me about it, someone who doesn't listen to the podcast, actually, they kind of looked at it and said, we found a silo for you. I called the guy, and it turns out that you have to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, because the deal with this is an expedition. The nearest dive shop was 2.5 hours away. So making airfills on multiple dives would have been difficult. There was electricity, there was camping, there were toilets, there were flush toilets down in the silo.
That was a pleasant surprise.
That was cool. And so we kind of were at a loss on how to figure it. So Bill and I talked about it for a while, and what were your concerns?
My concerns were exactly what we were going to be diving. How much debris and the exact conditions of the dive site. How rustic was it going to be? Are we actually going to be in the middle of the desert with absolutely nothing around us for miles and miles and miles? Was I going to be camping with, was my nearest bunkmate going to be a rattlesnake?
Chicken. No, it was going to be a windmill. There's so many windmills there. But I had no idea what this was going to be. Here's what I was told. I was told that it was 60 feet in diameter. It was 130 feet deep. And it was going to be a night dive. There was some lights coming up from it. But I was also told that I had to rent the entire facility for the weekend and provide insurance and have it added to my insurance. And so it became a little bit more of a logistical, I'm not going to say nightmare, but a logistical, I can't just get on the boat.
Right.
And the biggest thing was when he floored me and said, do you need me to bring some extra tanks? Because we have to drive 2.5 hours to get air.
His shop was the closest shop?
No, that was to somebody else's shop. His shop was 6 hours away.
Oh, okay.
So, when it all said and done, the expedition is like anything else that's an expedition. You got to put your big boy pants on and go. But this one was truly a bring everything expedition for me anyway.
Compressors, food,
gas,
water.
Yep. Nearest. Well, they had running water. They had that filter system on the water that we were diving in.
But we didn't know that at the time.
Right. Yep, we didn't know that. I guess we didn't know that till we got there. But we ended up having we basically were going to forget showers. Didn't know about showers until the day we left.
Right.
Didn't know about electricity till the day we left. I was bringing a generator.
Yeah.
And I put it out. I said, screw it, I'm going to figure it out. Invited Bill to go along with it. My wife Jill went. The two people that had originally, the husband and wife that originally talked me into the idea, they were going. So we had 5 people. I figured I'd get a 6th right away, and that would make a decent trip.
Okay, speaking of that, exactly how did you Because an expedition, you have no real idea what you're getting yourself into. So how did you decide on who was going and who wasn't?
Well, I'll take anybody for the most part, but I'll talk people out of it if they're not advanced open water. 2020 hindsight being what it is, night diver and advanced open water, I would say for that trip would be probably a good one. But expeditions tend to weed themselves out. Expeditions tend to be people who aren't good divers don't go on expeditions.
Correct.
They don't, and this was truly a real expedition. Like when I talk about expeditions, you guys have been listening to this show forever, you know that expeditions have two things. Number one, we've never been there before or never used this idea or never used this, what do you call it? The site or the charter boat or what have you. Another thing about expeditions, we really don't know what to expect. Where we have adventures that we call our trips that we call adventures, we've been there a couple hundred times.
Right.
Kind of like the Cooper River, South Carolina. I can even tell you what restaurant we're going to eat at. Munising, Michigan, I can tell you what restaurant we're going to eat at. Straits of Mackinac. That one might be considered an expedition because we really don't know exactly what we're going to do, but it's getting better. And those are all things that later in these podcasts we're going to talk about. So, but this one is a one that we didn't really have an idea what was going. We knew it was going to be camping, right? And so that was kind of an easy thing. I knew I would have to bring a compressor, which I was a little concerned about that because I'd never dragged a compressor that far, and I wanted a bailout, and I wanted some way of what the hell are we going to do if everything goes south. So I told everybody to bring 2 tanks, figuring that if nothing else, you had a second tank that you could get another dive in, then I could load everything up and go. And the guy that ran it, Mark Hannafin, he was really good about it. He said, I'll bring, how many people do you have? And I told him we had 10. I thought we had 10 at the original onset. And he said, well, I'll bring 10 extra tanks. And if worse comes to worse, what'll happen is we'll load them all up into my truck or your truck, and we'll drive the 2.5 hours to get there.
Right.
Certainly get to know each other. That's what he said. So
towing that little compressor was interesting.
Yeah, that's not even a little compressor.
It did really well though.
So
I'm talking about the trailer.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we go from this. Now, taking and jumping into another realm. Once we got on the road and got there, I mean, I was a little concerned because the first time I'd taken this thing taken this compressor on a trailer, I'd thrown a tire. So I was a little bit nervous about that. And then the whole week before, I was working on making sure everything goes, and the lights wouldn't stay, running lights wouldn't stay on. So I was a little concerned that I would have that problem. So we put big reflectors on it, so at least we wouldn't have. I mean, you hit the brake lights turned on. You hit the turn signals turned on, but the running lights didn't turn on. So, and I'm towing this 800-pound trailer behind my F-150 with 1,500 pounds of gear in it. I mean, we had tons of gear.
It was loaded.
And then tossed that one in there where it was my first trip with my rebreather. I think that might have been the second to last trip that I did where I took my extra gear.
I think it was the last trip that you did that.
Yep. Because that was the last trip. It was the last trip that I actually brought extra gear, that I didn't count on the rebreather being my only dive thing. I knew I was going to have enough air, so screw the rest of you. I was going to be able to dive. So we actually had on that trip, out of the 10 people that went, we had 3 rebreathers, which was really cool. It was the first time that I had been diving with some of these guys, and they all showed up pretty much heavy equipment. So once we got there, the video that Bill put together, I don't know if he used any of my footage, but the video that Bill put together of the actual silo shows you a little bit of what it was when we drove up. We were out in the middle of nowhere.
The middle of nowhere.
And Aberdeen was our last vestige of hope, and we went into this marketplace that looked like little Siberia or little Havana. It was you go into Aberdeen, and we go in this market, and it is they charged you 10% over the actual cost of the goods.
Yes.
plus tax.
Yep.
So everything was priced at incredible prices. It was like a can of vegetables, like 26 cents or something like that, and they charged you 30. And but the water, and we got beer, we got
all the essentials.
Yeah, well, that was it. That was the essentials, water and beer. But no, we had water and beer and things that we could cook over. I brought a grill. It was a lot of extra gear. I probably have brought probably 4 boxes of stuff that I wouldn't normally take on a trip that wasn't an expedition where I had no idea where we were going. And so I was planning on having a grill. I brought extra propane. I brought extra gasoline simply because I had no idea where this place is. And we had driven to Aberdeen. We had been on the road for about 19 hours.
Yeah.
And we still had an hour and a half to go to get to the silo. And I'll tell you, the directions to the silo were from Google Earth. And they were based on the latitude and longitude. And up to that point, I did not know that you could type up to this trip anyway. I did not know you can type latitude and longitude into Google Maps, Google routing,
right,
as a decimal, and it took us right to the entrance. But when you looked at this entrance, if it wasn't open and had American flag on it, I would have no idea that was it.
No, you would have driven right past it.
It was in the mountains.
Right.
That was bizarre. We're in the middle of a desert and suddenly there's mountains. I have no idea how that is. So once you got there and you pulled up to this thing, and here we were pulling up to, now we weren't first. Jason was first. He had gotten there about an hour before us, and
correct.
Mark was there waiting for us. But when we pulled up to this thing, I wanted to have the whole group go in and see the thing. I think had Jason gone down before we got there?
I think he had.
But I wanted to have the whole tour. I wanted to have the whole experience. And it was cool. What was your first impression?
Well, not knowing at all what to expect, what the inside of the missile silo was going to look like, I was absolutely blown away by the job that Mark Hannafin had done on the inside. Doing the apartment in what was the recreational center, the Air Force personnel, what's soon to be Murphy bed sort of hostel setup he's going to have, and the level that was the control room with the fold down beds and the shower and the washer and dryer, the bathrooms, tile floor, painting, the walls and the ceilings, all that. I was expecting a rusted out, dilapidated, dusty, dirty
missile silo,
something that's been sitting there for 50 plus years. So
I'm sure they're out there. I'm
sure they are too, but it exceeded my expectations by years and years and miles and miles.
I was pleasantly surprised too about how beefed up this thing was. To give you a little bit of history, which I'm repeating myself, but I don't care. A little bit of history. These things were built in the 1960s. They built 72 of them. And they were a deterrent for the Russians to say, look, we don't want you to blow us up, and we're going to kill you if you do. And when I did my talk for the Shipwreck Festival, the guys that were talking, one of the guys in the audience, he actually studied this entire time period, and he knew all about it. He said a near miss was 100 miles.
Right.
Or actually, a hit was 100 miles. Within 100 miles was a hit. Anything outside of that was a near miss. So there was no way that the Russians were going to actually hit one of these bases on purpose. So they were designed to take a near miss. So if a nuclear missile struck somewhere within 100 miles of this thing, it would shake and rattle and roll, and then these guys would take the 30 minutes to fuel their rocket and launch it to space.
Right.
And they weren't secret about it. You can find how these things were built on the internet. They knew how they were built. The Russians knew where they were.
Right.
And there was a guy sitting plant up on the top of the roof, looking down and calling in, hey, this thing's going to be really massive, and there's no way we're going to destroy it. It was an epoxy type resin concrete, And there was just no way that they were going to ever wreck this thing. There was stuff that the guys that were scrapping it, and they did a really good job of scrapping it, that they could not get off the wall that were that cool. Should have got a new coffee. But so let's talk about the diving. What'd you think about the diving?
The diving was very unique. I don't know about you, but one of my favorite things is when I'm dropping down, you can't see the bottom. You barely have a reference. And it's just dropping down. You're not sure exactly what's below you. It messes with my head a little bit of vertigo or disorientation or anything like that. I get the biggest kick out of that because it's almost like an adventure kind of,
Jill used to cry for that same thing. No, there's that right there could probably sum up this entire trip, because having absolutely no idea. The cool thing about being a really good diver, and this is the cool thing about Bill's a really good diver, I'm a really good diver. The cool thing about being a really good diver is that we know it's fresh water, we know it's going to be cold, we know we have to bring dive gear.
Yeah.
We know we have to bring a light. Other than that, we kind of know how deep it is. And it's, people will say how deep you can go. Well, hell, we'll go straight to the bottom unless we stop it.
Yeah.
So it's like, that was one of my favorite submarine movies. How deep will this thing go? It'll sink right to the bottom unless we stop it. So when you go and you start looking at that, I was just excited because here we were. I mean, as difficult as it was, from behind the scenes stuff, as difficult as it was for me to get that whole thing done, this was a very cool step. When you giant stride off that floating platform and jumped right into the water and you were dropping down into a tube.
Right.
That to me was cool. Bill knows because he stood next to me pretty much the entire time we were working it out. But there's a lot that from the back channel stuff that went into this. Making sure that I had the place insured, having to sign a stack of paperwork that says that I was responsible for anything that happened in there. Having a whole bunch of liability releases people had to fill out and sign. And it was on me. Yeah. And the other thing that was on me is it's like it was like people are never going to trust me again unless this was really that cool. And I'm going to say that not every one of the trips that I've done were as cool as this one. There were some that were cooler. There were some that were not so cool. But the diving itself, when I dropped down, I was really surprised at how much structure was down there.
I was very surprised at how much structure was still down there. Like I said, it was plenty to swim through, plenty to see and do, plenty to investigate. When looking at the original diagram, I don't know if Mark Hannafin is the one that sent us the diagram of this is how deep it is. Down here there's some debris, and he had that little stick figure diver down there at 130, 140 feet. I figured, okay, are we just dropping down to see a piece of grating and maybe part of a catwalk?
Well, and that's from the videos that other people had shot using GoPro and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
You would swear to God that was all you're going to see.
Yeah.
And for you guys that have shot that kind of video, you might see, we had 3 video cameras in the water, 4 video cameras total on the trip. You may see other things that you haven't seen before. I did not. I had never seen really good pictures come out of that mine.
No.
Or out of that silo.
No.
Nothing like what I took.
No, nothing like I took either.
But the I don't know. We haven't published any of that anywhere, have we? We didn't put the silo thing up. We knew it was for this show. No. So, yeah, a lot of this stuff, by the way, you guys, there's video channel stuff that you're going to see that are going to see some old footage. We're going to talk about other things when it comes to this podcast. But as far as the diving here is concerned, never ran into anybody else down there that that you weren't able to swim around. It wasn't crowded. That was kind of the biggest thing that I was concerned about, was that it was going to be crowded. And that when you had... we had heard stories. Mark had told me stories about people bringing 40 people down there and having all 40 of them in the water at once and never running into each other. And now, 2020 hindsight, I can see that. I don't know how you'd get people to do open water certification there, but I guess it's
I don't
possible.
know either. Maybe if they were just hanging out at the using that gyro assist.
Or put a floating bar out with a line to that gyro assist.
That's probably exactly what they do.
Mm-hmm. That's how I would do it. But I'd heard of Texas dive shops doing open water there. One of the girls that we used to dive with out at Morehead City, her dive shop used to go there every weekend.
Really?
Yeah, that was like once a month. I'm sorry, every month, not once a weekend, every weekend. But it was just they'd go dive in there. They'd camp and they do exactly what we would do.
Huh.
So I'll take it. Anything else you want to talk about diving? Move on.
The swim through the areas or the debris that you could swim through and the entanglement. I don't know if I would just leave it for advanced open water. I would definitely.
Oh, you just have to give people a good briefing.
Yeah.
There was nothing there that. It was really well cleaned up. There was a couple places that if you tried to swim through, I mean, normal people aren't like us. Normal people wouldn't have tried to swim through that.
No, they probably wouldn't have.
Through
In hindsight, thinking of some of the areas I was squeezing through.
and normal people would have worried more about, I don't want to be the guy that blew it out.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the guy that destroyed the visibility there. So that's that brings us to that. So the diving was pretty spectacular, and in the camaraderie, the people that came with us, the expeditions tend to bring out the best in people, and the people that are there. When you don't have, I mean, we had no cell phone service. I don't think we had cell service. I don't remember having cell service. We didn't have internet. You sat back and you weren't a lot of campfire, but we had a grill and Jason had brought a bottle of bourbon and
yeah,
there was a lot of beer and not that we sat around and liquored ourselves up, because after 5 dives you were pretty wiped out, but we sat around in the rain and watched the sunset. It was a spectacular sunset each night. Sunrises and sunsets.
Sunrises and sunsets, you couldn't beat them.
That was really cool. But all in all, that was cool. So,
but we had a great group. There were no. I hope all the expeditions go like this, but with the expeditions, because everybody fully goes into this fully knowing that they don't know what to expect, you don't get any whiners. People don't complain about the weather or.
Yeah, that typically goes with, well, that's not always been the case on expeditions. That's
sorry
unfortunate.
To hear that.
Yep, that's not always been the case, and that'll be a different story for later. So we'll be right back. So, all in all, this silo trip, this is a expedition that I think was really darn exciting. It was a trip that, if you've listened to the podcast, you already know that I was pretty geeked about it going into it, pretty geeked about it coming back out of it. We're going to go back in 2018, in September of 2018, because the weather was so freaking fantastic. We might as well keep up with what we know. The trip will be another expedition, even though we've done it. It's going to be another one where we have to put the big boy pants on, bring a couple tanks. We'll have a little bit better understanding of what the diving is going to be. But other than that, I don't know what the silo is going to be. Mark was doing a ton of work on it. And we may be able to skip camping because he was making it into a bed and breakfast. So that might just be something very cool. So as far as this video podcast goes, this being the debut, I hope you like it. And I hope that you have enjoyed it. And I hope that you share it on your Facebook and other social media sites. Because the more views you give it, the more views your friends give it, the more views that are directly influenced by you, the more we're encouraged to do this more and more. So until next week, go out, have fun, stay safe. Remember, scuba diving can be dangerous, but it can also be exciting and fun. If you want to, you can give us a call. You can check us out. You can contact us. You can. We're pretty apt. Follow DiverSync on Facebook and Twitter. Check out the DiverSync website. You can also support our sponsor, Divers Incorporated. That's my dive shop, and Bill works there. So you end up calling us, you probably pick up the phone and get one of us on it, for lack of a better term. These are going to be a monthly podcast. We're looking to do that. We're going to try to tighten it up a little bit after we see what the format's going to be in this whole beta one. We'll this may be scrapped. So if you want to download it and save it, you may never see it again. So until
it won't
next,
be scrapped.
it won't be scrapped. But make sure you subscribe to the DiverSync YouTube channel. We don't have any subscribers. We launched it this morning, so we look forward to seeing you, and we hope you go out and have some fun. Stay safe.